I'm going to go on record as saying I do not think Taylor Heineke is an elite backup.
Ooh.
However, I think Sam Howell's an elite backup. However, Raheem Morris has gone on.
Pop, how you doing, man?
Doing well. Back from an odyssey.
Yeah, glad to have you back.
Traveled on the worst travel day in history.
Yeah, literally. Made it all the way to Australia and back, and somehow all you did was go to Atlanta.
All I got to say is kick Kot's Microsoft, kick Kot's CloudStrike, kick Kot's, I won't name the airline, but I guess maybe they couldn't do anything about it.
Yeah. We'll get to that later. I'm gonna run the clock for you later, but before we get to it, we got to get to the meat and potatoes here. Guys. Thank you all again for running up these subscribers, running up this giveaway. We are so close. So if you haven't subscribed or you've been putting off subscribing or you've been putting off joining the giveaway, guys, hit that subscribe button. Then email your name, your jersey size, and your address to domandpopgiveaway1@gmail.com, and you will be entered to win a Jaden Daniels Commanders jersey. Have we picked the color yet? Maybe of your choice. We'll see when we get there. To your address, you will have it by week 1 of the season. So, guys, take care of that. Please do it. Thank you all for your support. And once we hit 500, we got to start talking about another giveaway. So be ready for that as well.
Yeah, I'm cool. I mean, as long as they're available, I'm cool to let the people pick the color.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're so close. And if you're a supporter and if you're a subscriber, so easy to subscribe. Tell a friend, send the link, say, hey, subscribe to these guys. They're a fun listen. I'm trying to win a jersey. Just hit that button and get us over the top. We're so, like you said, we're less than 10 to go. So we would love to get there this week to celebrate the kickoff of training camp.
Yep. And there it is. That's what we're getting into. So before we kick off training camp, Pop, I cut you off a little bit earlier. I'm going to let Pop loose. I figure some of you guys probably impacted by this as well. We didn't know. We had a close family friend of ours was also stranded at the airport, at the Atlanta airport at the same time. Didn't know until Pop got out of there. But it's incredible, man. What a disaster. So, Pop, give the people the rundown. So to give the vibe, how are you feeling as this whole thing is happening?
That's total chaos. I mean, it was total chaos. I was flying from out of the country, got into Atlanta pretty early, around noon. And, there were delays expected to the first flight, thinking, all right, but it's just constant, got closer to flight time, flight canceled. So I got to scramble to get on another flight at 8 o'clock at night. And the line to the airline counter to get flight changes done was literally a mile long. There was hours of standing in line. So I was lucky enough to be able to work with a travel agent that booked the travel originally and through the app on the phone, which was almost impossible, to get another flight booked. Well, that one was scheduled to leave at 8 p.m. Didn't get canceled till 5 a.m. in the morning. So they just strung us along. And then you look up at the board and it's just canceled. So anyway, one more flight canceled yesterday until finally, by the grace of God, got out of there and got home. It's such a crazy feeling to be stuck in the airport. I think I counted it up for 29 hours.
My God.
And just get 3 flight cancellations, not wondering whether the next one's going to make it out or not. And then all of a sudden, boom, you're home. Thank goodness. Great to be home. But yeah, it was an experience. Kick Kots to everybody involved in making that happen. Apparently it was somebody wrote code that they released that, caused a glitch. It was
like a software update or something, right?
But it happens. I will say this. It's all seriousness. The folks that work in Atlanta airport are just incredibly patient, incredibly nice. To the people in the food court or making sure you could find a seat and cleaning up, to the people at the counter with the airline. They were doing all they could, but it was chaos. It's the only word I can explain Total chaos.
There were over, I think at the peak of it, there were over 100,000 people in the Atlanta airport stuck, which is just insane. I mean, that's like Jerry World, right? Like, that's just insane to think about the amount of people
and look like
stuck
it too.
there. Yeah, and nobody's happy. Nobody wants to be in that situation. I hate being at the airport when I'm over here at dinky little Burbank Airport right up the road, and there's 25 people at my gate. I can't even imagine. But Pop made it out of it. We might have some Diamond Pop sandals dropping soon. Pop was in flow state working on inventions while he was stuck there.
I was like 36 hours without sleep. It's crazy.
He reinvented the croc while he was sitting there. I don't think he's come up with this, but anyways, let's get into it, guys. Obviously, the
fun episode here.
The biggest news of this week, without a doubt, nothing bigger happening in the world right now, is the Commanders training camp preview. So we're getting into it. We're talking Commanders training camp. All kinds of good stuff happening. Guys, by the time you are listening to this, you'll be listening to this Monday morning, hopefully. If you're listening to it a little later in the week, training camp's already started. Training camp starts tomorrow. So that is pretty wild. Can you believe we're already here, Pop? It has happened so quickly.
Yep, we got the DQ backwards hat in celebration. Dan Quinn's first training camp. In case you didn't notice.
Yes, sir.
Tom's having a bad hair day, apparently.
I need a haircut so bad. It is a disaster. I've been so busy with work. I haven't had time to go, which is good. Grateful for all the work. What you got? Is that just an Under Armour hat there, Pop?
Yes, sir.
Good stuff.
I think the people are too worried about the brand.
I'm just checking in. But so we're getting into it. So we're going to go through our top 5 things to watch for training camp. Probably go through these kind of quick. A lot of these are things we've already talked about. We're doing a little more of like an overview today, and then we'll probably get more in-depth as training camp goes along. As these storylines develop, we'll pick out the most important ones, go in-depth. So number 1, of course, guys, it's the headline. It's the thumbnail. It's everything we've been talking about for the last month and a half. It's everything we'll talk about in D.C., hopefully for the next 10 years. Jaden Daniels' development. What does he look like? When does Dan Quinn name him as a starter? What are we looking out for? I'm going to go quick on this one. I've talked a lot about JD. I feel like I can be pretty concise, and then I'll kick it over to you, Pop. For me, I think Dan Quinn's going to name him a starter by the first preseason game because he's going to start that game, and by the second preseason game at the latest, I'd say. I don't think it's going to take long. We know what the plan is. We know what's happening here. I also kind of don't care at what point Dan Quinn names him the starter unless something goes way left, right? But in terms of his development, what I'm looking for the most, I want to see those legs, man. I want to see where is he working in that run? What's the balance of how much he's running versus how much he's staying in the pocket? What's his discipline looking like in the pocket? Is he keeping those eyes downfield, looking to throw the ball and extend the play rather than just tuck it and run? And is he doing a better job of avoiding some of those hits, being a little less reckless with those legs when he does get outside of the pocket? That's what I'm looking out for the most because I think the arm is there, the accuracy is there. Those things I'm not worried about. What I'm really worried about is what is he doing with his legs? How is he maneuvering in that pocket? And how is he getting outside and extending plays?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to hear, I think I do want to mention a little teaser because the second half of the pod, we're going to get into we're going to check in on all the NFL rookie quarterbacks. Of course, we're going to lead that with Jaden Daniels. So there's going to be a little bit more Jaden Daniels talk. Stick in for the second half of the pod. But, yeah, I don't know how easy it's going to be able to tell other than when he plays in the preseason games, that run versus thick in the pocket ratio and his instincts there. I think honestly, I think our best barometer on JD is going to be when the season starts. I know that's speaking the obvious. You wouldn't expect anything earth-shattering. But, seeing how he looks in whatever level of series he gets in preseason, which that'll be a different topic we can get into before preseason starts, I think is going to be interesting. I would expect that we're not going to hear nothing but really good, glowing reports. I mean, we'll get a little bit more. That's the exciting thing about training camp. There'll be more reporting about did he throw a pick? Did he throw a great touchdown pass? I heard something pretty exciting this week. They talked about how they're planning to use Terry. So that'd be an interesting thing to look out for. Maybe that'll be my other thing to be most excited about. But and in terms of when he gets named as a starter, I think it's going to happen pretty quick. I think Dan Quinn's a smart enough guy. He's gonna. That's why he wears his hat backwards. He's gonna put that to bed pretty early. I think it's pretty obvious. It'd be a stunner if JD wasn't starter, right? So I think that's going to happen pretty quick. It's gonna be exciting to watch, no doubt. We're there. Starts in a couple of days. Can't wait.
Definitely. So the next most important thing, or some may argue even the most important thing in comparison to Jaden Daniels, is who's going to be protecting him, right? What's that offensive line?
We got a Dom scouting report here queued up?
We got a little Dom scouting report here queued up. So this is pretty simple on the offensive line, I'd say. Right now, as of today, they're playing tomorrow. They have to beat the Philadelphia Eagles to make it into the playoffs, or they have to beat the Kansas City Chiefs to win the Super Bowl. Whatever scenario you want to draw up, or we need a win tomorrow, right? It's going to be Lucas, I would say Paul, Biadasz, Cosme, and Wiley. Now,
you think Paul over Allegretti?
So the left side of that line, that is where we don't know yet, right? We don't know with Allegretti. Is he ready to take that step as a starter? Was he more of a depth piece? We don't know. Paul's who started there last year. And I think Paul's is getting a little bit slept on. I don't think Paul is a bad left guard at all. I
like the competition there. I like the competition.
So there will be some competition there at left guard. I think Allegretti and Paul are both guys at similar points in their career. Obviously, I think the right side of the line is pretty solidified with Biadasz, who I think is a stud at center, Cosme, who I think is a stud at right guard, and Wiley, who at best there are some question marks about at right tackle. At best. We'll leave it at that for now because you got Big Luke on the left side, who was famously a swing tackle. Played really well in his one game against Atlanta. Obviously, some very unfortunate circumstances led to that start. And, of course, Charles Leno was rightfully given his job back after that. But when Cornelius Lucas was called on at the time, he started and he played really well. So can he sustain that over the course of the season? I'm going to say probably not. I'm going to say he probably comes back and regresses to the mean a little bit there in terms of his place within the NFL. However, he's in that, bottom to middle of the road starter to elite backup range. He's like a Taylor Heineke at left tackle, right? Who we're going to talk about a little bit later in the podcast.
Taylor Heineke at left tackle.
He's like right about in that range. Now you've got Brandon Coleman, who's the X factor of this situation, right? Can he start at left tackle? Can he be that franchise left tackle, that third round pick? Can he come in, be that guy for us at left tackle? If that's the case, if he proves during training camp he can be that guy at left tackle, do we now have a competition at right tackle with Cornelius Lucas and Andrew Wiley? Now, of course, I think Lucas would be a big upgrade from Wiley if he can go play on the right side. So that would make a world of a difference. Now, the only other thing I think Pop is going to look into a little bit here, can we bring on a left tackle in free agency? Are there free agent options at left tackle? Do you have a little report on that, Pop?
I got a lot of names. I don't know. Any of the names mean a lot to me. There's Donovan Smith, David Bakhtiari, DJ Humphries, Jason Peters, Charles Leno, Billy Turner. Any of these names stand out to you? Cameron Irvin? Dwayne Brown?
Bakhtiari is a guy where it's like, if he really can be full health and 80% of what he was previously, then great. And if not, which is the most likely scenario, you're looking at like wasting a lot of money. So yeah. I'm not a big Bakhtiari guy unless it's like a 1 year prove it kind of situation and you're desperate. But obviously he was an elite tackle at one point in his career. TJ Humphries is another name that I'm not against, but serviceable. I just don't know that any of these guys are that big of an upgrade over Cornelius Lucas. So
Leonard's still out there.
Yeah.
Maybe if he comes in and more knowing that he's going to be in more of a backup role, it's a possibility. But how are you feeling about the O-line? I mean, real quick, because we need to move on. But I mean, you've rattled off a lot of names. You think this is going to be a better offensive line than what we saw last year? Hard to go backwards, right?
Yeah, hard to go backwards, and I think hopefully, like, schematically, we can do a little bit better, because I think part of the problem last year, I think a large part of the problem last year was the enemy was just like, go block. Good luck, 5 dudes. There was no chipping. There was no helping out the left tackle. There was no, like, they weren't getting creative with protections or rolling protections, and Howell couldn't identify protections, and Gates wasn't helping him with that. That's the biggest problem last year, I think. So I think we will see a little bit better performance just off the rip with Biadish at center and Daniels and Kingsbury. With those three, I think they will be much more on the same page in terms of IDing protections, helping Daniels out, and getting the best possible setup. I still don't see this as a top 10 offensive line or a top 15 offensive line, but I think maybe we can get in that 20 to 15 range and be serviceable with this
and
unit.
You hear, just to close on this one, because we do need to move on. You hear different things about Wiley, right? Some people say, Logan Paulson, who I respect a lot, says he played a lot better than he was given credit for. He just had some highlight bad plays. But maybe that second year of Cosme and Wiley playing together on that right side, maybe there's something to be said for that, right?
Yeah.
With and stabilizing the center position, which is the worst thing you want as a revolving door. Maybe that right side's pretty secured up. And, we just got to worry about filling in the gaps on the left. And I do think it'll be a much better offensive line, but I agree with you. I don't think it's still going to be more in that 15 to 25 range or probably even 20 to 25 range. That they'll have to scheme around it a bit. And it'll continue to be an area of focus going forward for building up. But let's get into the defense. I want to hear this. We're going to project the starting defense. It's going to be real quick. Dom's going to take us through and project who we think the starting defense will be as we get into camp.
Got it. So going into camp, I think this changes a little bit if you want to talk about 2 versus 3 linebackers, but I think the closest thing to the base set, I think the combination of guys you're going to see the most often on the defense, probably be Armstrong, Farrell, Payne, Allen on the line, and then you've got at linebacker Wagner and Luvu. And then at cornerback, Wagner juggling a couple things here. At cornerback, you probably got Michael Davis, St. Juice, Sandrill, and Forbes will probably be some combination of those guys. I bet you it's going to be Michael Davis, St. Juice, and Sandrill at your nickel.
I agree.
I think Forbes is not ready to start yet.
You have to earn a spot.
And then I think you will see more times than not, I think you're going to see 2 linebackers, Wagner, Luvu, and you're going to see 3 safeties, Quan Martin, Jeremy Chin, Derek Forrest. I think that's going to be the most likely setup, the scenario that we're looking at the most there. That's what I got for you.
I'm high on the defense. I've said it before. I think there's definitely some interesting stories. What does it look like for Jamin Davis? Is he a possible camp cut? He's only got 1 year left. And then secondly, Manuel Forbes, I think that's such a huge wild card. But even if you extract those 2 guys, I like what I'm hearing. Maybe you worry a little bit about defensive end, but I think that we've picked up. There's enough depth there, and there's enough guys in that rotation that we even didn't even talk about the young guys like Armstrong and KJ Henry, who are in the second year now and showed some flashes last year. Maybe somebody that we don't even know steps up and has a big year. I am on the record. I think this is a top 10 to 15 defense this year, and that could go a long way. So write it down. If I'm wrong, you can roast me, but I'm high on this defense.
I think we have too many question marks right now for me to go that far.
I'm calling.
But I like it. Pop is optimistic. I got to see what's going on. My biggest storyline is going to be that secondary. What's going on those outside corners? How does St. Juice and Michael Davis look on the outside there? That's the biggest question for me.
But I think this time last year we were talking about the defense. We were high on it, but then they were probably coached below their ability. If we could coach these guys a bit above their ability and to maximize their capability, which I totally expect with this coaching staff. And it's not just the guys at the top of the coaching staff. The position coaches are terrific as well. I think we're going to see some good things out of the D.
Hey, we don't have enough time to talk about the difference between last year and going into last year and going into this year right now. But we'll see. We'll get into it another pod for sure. At number 4 for today, out of our 5, we've got Cliff Kingsbury's offense. So what are we seeing there in terms of the scheme? What clues do we think we're going to get during training camp? I think we're going to see a lot of shotgun. We're going to see a lot of up-tempo offense, a lot of quick offense, a lot of no huddle. I think we'll probably lead the NFL in pace or be towards the top of it. And the thing that I'm most intrigued to see is red zone usage between Eckler and B-Rob. And just in general, like, I'm really intrigued to see, if we're taking Jaden Daniels out of the equation, what is that split looking like? Because Eckler doesn't want to have 300 carries. Eckler doesn't want to be a bell cow. And frankly, if there's a bell cow on this roster, Brian Robinson, at this point in their careers, Brian Robinson is the better choice, which it sounds crazy to say because of the name value of Austin Eckler and what he's done for all of our fantasy teams, or done to our fantasy teams if you've had to play against him in the last 5-6 years. But I think Brian Robinson has got to be the bell cow there. So how does Eckler fit into that? What's that split look like? That's what I'm most excited to see.
Well, it's a little bit exciting too because they've got a bit of a Swiss Army knife of weapons, right? So you might look at the team and you might question who's that number 2 wide receiver really going to be established, right, as, or other things, or, players still like Eckler and the tight ends escaping me. Ertz, got it.
Yeah.
I didn't sleep a lot this weekend, people. What do they got left in the tank, especially Ertz? But you think about it, you talk about red zone. You could line up in a situation where it's both Eckler and B-Rob in the backfield. Maybe you throw a little Sinnott in there who could be a lead blocker. And all of a sudden it's like, and we know Ertz is very effective in the red zone. It's like, and then you've got Jaden Daniels with his legs who could fake one way, get around the other way, and walk in for a touchdown. I think that could create some problems for defenses, which is very, very different than the situation we had last year. It was pretty much B-Rob. Sure. And, you got question marks at quarterback. So I think it's going to be exciting. And not so much predicting what we're going to see from Cliff Kingsbury, but watching how that evolves and what we hear from him, when he does his pressers in camp. I think that's going to be really exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty good stuff. I can't wait to see that. So, Pop, real quick, I think we've damn near talked about every position on the football field, but is there something you're really excited about that you want to hit on? I just talked about it. I think my sleeper is probably that running back split. I'm really excited to see what's going on there. So I'm going to defer this one to you before we move on to our 15 to 25 here. Is there something we haven't talked about yet that you're really excited to get into?
I think what I'm most excited to, of course, it's going to be great to see DQ lead this team, and we got the hats on to honor that. But I'm excited about the receiver position in general. And I heard an exciting nugget that the plan is to use Terry in multiple ways this year.
Finally.
Right? I think personally this guy is a guy that can play any position in the receiver group. I think he's that versatile, and we know he's got the speed, and we know he's great at contested catches and got great hands. And, maybe he's not elite at any one thing, but I think if you use him in multiple ways and feed him the ball, I would really love to see that with Terry. And I also think that'll help Jahan, and that's going to help the rest of the receiving group, and it'd be interesting to see what that depth actually looks like. Going forward and how the other guys step up. But I'm interested in that receiving group because we've got to see a better year out of Dotson, right?
Yeah.
And who actually steps up as that third guy. I think that's what I'm excited about.
Well, because Dotson going into his third year, this is actually pretty crucial in terms of him as a first rounder. Where are we headed with that fifth year option
good point.
Next offseason? So we need to have an eye on that for sure. I think if he shows you anything like what he showed you his rookie year, just because of how much wide receivers cost in the NFL nowadays, of course you're going to take that fifth-year option, but we'll see. Who knows? This is a guy that, this is the previous regime's guy, and frankly, this is a guy that was a bold move, drafting him where he got drafted with that trade back in relation to Chris Olave, all those things. So these are all things that are going to factor in to that decision-making if he doesn't come out and silence the doubters this year. So that's something to keep an eye on.
And if he does, if Dotson becomes Jahan Dotson that we all expect him to
believe
become.
in.
This could be sneakily a really good receiver group. This could go from one of our weakest position groups to one of our best, because I think obviously you got Luke McCaffrey. It's another wild card because he's a rookie, but we've seen and heard good things about them. I think people sleep on Jamison Crowder. When he got in the game, when he was given the opportunity, he was extremely effective. And I think as a fourth or fifth guy, he's a great guy to have. And I'm not suggesting he should be top 3, but I think as a fourth or fifth guy on that roster,
sure,
he's a very capable receiver. You hate, that's okay. The rest of the names, I don't know if there's anyone here worth talking about. I mean, you got De'Ami Brown, but I'm not sure he's still going to be around when we kick this off the season.
I love Jamison Crowder in 2015. I love him as a special teams guy. I love Jamison Crowder. I would be just fine if we don't hear Jamison Crowder's name called much this year, other than a couple nice punt returns. So
when we had to lean on him last year, was he or was he not effective?
He made a few good plays. He should never have been leaned on in the places where he had to be leaned on because of how bad that offense was.
Injuries happen.
So it wasn't injuries. It was just Eric Bieniemy had a problem with McLaurin, and that's it. But we'll talk about that on another podcast. Let's get
never again.
Or never again. I prefer never again, guys. Drop a 1 in the chat down there if you never want to hear us say EB's name again. Because
we're about to get into part 2, aka Thursday pod for now.
Yes.
What the hell is going on with your background there, man? Can you sort this out for the people before the comments blow up?
It's a lot of logistics in the air, man. I don't want to get into that on a public platform here, but there's a lot of
Can we clean up a little bit next week? I mean,
this is all I got right now. I had to move out of my studio. I'm working on putting things together, and I was very graciously gifted a lot of stuff. So this is the storage situation.
Happening in the West Coast operation.
This is the storage situation for now. We don't need to get any further into it today. But this is where we're at right now. I don't think you're going to see much of it because usually it's kind of just like this. But what you see,
it's a disaster. For those of you that can't see, it's pretty much a disaster behind.
It's a mess, man, and this is the best I can do. But we're moving forward anyways. Thank you, Bob. I know that was pressing news here. So, guys, this week for our second segment for our clip, for those of you guys tuning in on Thursday, we are doing rookie quarterback class news, notes, and rankings. So obviously the big names, right? Jaden Daniels is the biggest name here for us. Nationally, the biggest name, probably Caleb Williams, quarterback 1. Then you got Drake May, Michael Penix Jr., and J.J. McCarthy. We're going to touch on all of those factors moving forward. And don't forget the boy Bo Nix, who Sean Payton said he saw some Patrick Mahomes in at the time of the draft.
Sean Payton's never wrong.
No, never wrong. Never. So
but I thought it'd be fun to do a check-in. Obviously, we're going to start with our Jaden Daniels, right? We always try to start with a commander topic. But I thought it'd be cool to do a check-in because you talk a lot about these youngsters. Youngsters, that's an old guy term. Talk a lot about these youngsters when they're drafted, right? But to check in right as training camp, all the rookies, most of these guys have reported already. So hear what the latest buzz in on each of these guys and how we're vibing on them. I thought that'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah. So we want to start with Jaden Daniels, I guess.
Yes, sir.
That's the vibe. So what does he need to be successful in his rookie year, and what will that success look like? Let's take a couple minutes and discuss this. This is a recurring theme here on the pod we kind of talk about, but we're bringing it back for you this week. I think in terms of what we need, obviously we got to protect him. That's number one to make him successful. We got to protect him, and we got to scheme those weapons open because those are two things that we just didn't do for Howell last year, right? I don't think Howell played well, but Howell also didn't get a fair opportunity, I'd say. So those are the two main things for me. We've got to protect JD, and we've got to simplify the scheme at the beginning, get him building confidence, staying in rhythm, step hitch, balls out, like that kind of stuff. We got to keep him moving fast, keep him comfortable. From Jaden, I said it earlier in the pod, I'll say it again. I'm really excited to see what's going on with these legs, man. That's how I'm feeling this week. Maybe it'll change, but I think right now the initial thing. Everybody was talking about his legs and what a great runner he is. And then I think we kind of overcorrected and we're talking about, wait, no, he's more of a pocket passer. And I think everybody's almost looking at JD as if he's a pocket passer. But he's a hybrid guy, man. This is a 60-40, I think, hybrid guy. He's mostly a pocket passer. He's a really good pocket passer, but those legs are weapons. So how do we see him use those legs once we get into the regular season, once we see him attacking, and how can he kind of freeze defenses with that threat of his ability to run? We see what guys like Lamar and in spurts like Justin Fields do to defenses. We see what guys like Josh Allen can do to defenses with that ability to run. So what can Jaden Daniels take from these defenses with those legs? That's what I'm most excited to.
Yeah, and I think when you're running as part of a scheme rather than running to sort of scramble and save your life, and then you're just sort of freelancing out there, right? That's when players tend to get hurt. And I think first and foremost, we got to keep him upright. We got to keep him on the field. I want to see him play all 17 games more than anything. And I think his development will come. And you said it perfectly, right? You know, I don't know why so many coaches get this wrong, but, you know, Eric Bieniemy must have been one of those guys when he taught his kids how to swim, just threw them into the middle of the pool, said, have at it. Sometimes that's an effective method. But I think for a young player, I think that you could, it's such a confidence builder if you don't rely on them too much. Like you said, simplify the scheme. It's a building block situation. You could start to add pieces and add more to that offensive scheme and put more on the shoulders of the quarterback as you gain confidence, but do it one piece at a time. So I think it'll be really important for Cliff Kingsbury to remain patient, first and foremost. And it's going to be so exciting to watch. Expect big things. I mean, you know, is he the best quarterback in the draft? Really? We're going to find out really soon.
I'll tell you what, if Eric Bieniemy taught the Tenalias how to swim, this bloodline would have been extinct.
We might have needed EB.
This bloodline. No, we have no swimming instinct in this bloodline. If we got thrown into the deep end as children, we would have drowned. That would have been it, man.
It's true. Survival. We can't float. That's the problem.
No, like rocks, man. Yeah. It's awful. Anyways, but so touch on Caleb Williams. Brian Poles, the Bears GM, is really just focused on him kind of leaning on the talent around him. The quote is, it's really just to maximize his ability. It's about leaning on the talent around him. You don't have to do everything on your own, which is a good situation for a rookie quarterback. There will be adversity. I want to see him lean on us during those times. So obviously, Williams, does anybody have a problem with me saying he's in a better situation in Chicago than Daniels is in Washington in terms of the weapons he has and what he's working with out there?
It's a totally fair statement.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a totally fair statement.
We don't know yet, coaching on that side. But I will say Matt Eberflus, I called him America's favorite Uber driver on the pod last year before he absolutely smoked us in week 5. So I got to give him a little credit. I got to put my hand up. He got the locker room there, man. He got those boys rallying around him. Montez Sweat obviously made the switch over there, has been playing really well on the defensive side of the ball. I think Chicago, you forget, this is not the worst team in football last year. I think they won 6 or 7 games.
They were 7 and 10. I was just looking for it. Yeah, they were 7 and 10. So they
decent.
They're knocking on the door, right?
Yeah, while having massive quarterback issues. So
I feel like we'd feel a lot different about the Commanders if we were 7 and 10 last year.
Yeah,
you know, with all the upgrades we made compared to the base is a 4 and
exactly
13.
Oh, too many. But they add Keenan Allen, they add DeAndre Swift, they add Rome Odunze. It's
DJ
all
Moore,
added to DJ Moore, who's already been there, who's an all-pro talent there at wide receiver and former Terp. So he's got a good situation there. I think the expectations will be higher, but I think he's got a good situation, and I think Williams is a guy that's cut out for those high expectations.
And you're hearing Jaden Daniel type buzz from him. Like, we haven't seen some of the controversial stuff. It seems to have quieted down.
It was all junk. I told you it was all junk. It was all junk. I'm taking my victory lap.
But credit to him that he has not put himself in that position so much. And he might, as he gets more comfortable, and that's fine. Do you? What matters is what you do on the field. But, you're hearing a lot of Jaden Daniels type buzz out of him in terms of how he is as a teammate, how seriously he's taking it. So I do think the Bears fans should be really excited. I think I said it before, best game of the year, the most exciting game of the year to look forward to is that showdown. I think it's week 8 between Chicago and the Commanders. I might try to get out to that thing. That'd be a lot of fun.
Could be a good game.
That'd be a lot of fun to get there.
Could be a good game. But so the next buzz we got here, Drake May, right? This is a guy that I was waving the flag for a while. Obviously, as we started to lean more that we were going in the other direction, I got behind my guy, but this is still a guy that I think is very talented. And he goes to what is effectively my second team. I spent a lot of time in Boston. I got to see a lot of good Patriots teams. Got to witness 2 Super Bowls there in my 4 years of college time in Boston. So I got a soft spot for the Pats. Now, if the Commanders play them, I want blood. But I got a soft spot for the Pats when when they're not affecting the Commanders. So Drake May over there, he's in a battle with former Commander Jacoby Brissett. And so for him,
a recurring theme here. We're going to hear about a few former Commanders / Redskins in this segment.
Yeah. So tell me if this sounds familiar to you at all, Pop. Speaking of recurring theme, we've got a UNC quarterback who is very effective from a clean pocket, but they're really concerned about the way he will be ready for game action in terms of having defenders in his face. And that's basically what they're saying is, hey, this spring he showed he can be super effective in a clean pocket, in T-shirts and panties, as Doc Walker says, but the quickest way for him to prove he's going to be ready and for him to take over Jacoby Brissett this training camp is what can he do with defenders in his face with the pass rush. Does that sound at all familiar to you, Pop? I mean, am I just having deja vu here or what?
Yeah, I mean, it is familiar for sure.
It's bizarre.
It is familiar for sure. And it is a couple of the things that, for me, being a fan of the game for a long time, being a fan of the league, it seems like when you hear that a quarterback has issues with his footwork and with his pocket presence, those are the most difficult things to correct over time. And what's always worried me about Drake May as a potential draft pick for us is that he just seems a bit more of a project than he should be for somebody that was considered second or third in this draft. It seems like things are trending towards Jacoby being the starter and then bringing Drake on. That's going to be a bad team. You talked about Caleb Williams being in a better situation. Jaden Daniels is in a much better situation than Drake May. He should be thanking the Lord and everyone else out there that he got drafted by the Commanders, because that is a rough situation in New England.
Yeah,
and I think it makes sense. And I think a veteran like Jacoby Brissett is a smart move for them, because they got to figure out what they got as a team. And you don't want to throw a rookie quarterback out there when you're figuring that out. You want that steadying presence. So it's going to be interesting, but it seems like he'll start the season as a backup.
And you've got nothing in terms of receiver weapons at running back. You've got Ramondre Stevenson, who I think is a great running back. And you've got Antonio Gibson, who I also think is talented, but we know what Gibson
Pats
is.
Fans, let us know. Let us know what's going on up there.
Oh, it's a tough situation. I mean, it's bad, man. It's that Pats team is what's going on there. Unfortunately, as much as I love Belichick, Bill lost his fastball as a GM towards the end of his career, and that team is not set up very well.
And then they elevated assistant coach, who, might be a great coach, but it's not necessarily the situation of a real reset, right?
Yeah.
With the team,
I like
right?
Mayo. Mayo. I don't know if Mayo.
I'm rooting for him.
I like him. I like him, and the people around Boston like him a lot. I got a lot of people there that I hold close, but I like Mayo. I like what's going on up there. I'm worried about if he's going to get a real shot with the way this roster is constructed, but this isn't the Patriots podcast. We can move on here, but it's an interesting situation up there in New England for sure. Speaking of interesting situations, we got Michael Penix Jr. I mean, is this the first time in NFL history a guy gets drafted number 8 overall and starts off as the third string quarterback and will actually probably be the third string quarterback week 1? I mean, what a bizarre bizarre situation.
This is an interesting, really interesting story, and that was the fun part about going through and making this part of the outline, is researching this a little bit, figuring out what's going on in each of these situations. And this Falcons story is kind of fascinating, really, as you break it down.
Yeah, so it sounds like, which I'm going to go on record and say this is exactly how this poor guy, Raheem Morris, who I think got screwed with this whole situation, and this could, if he doesn't play this perfectly, this could be the end of his career too. But he's got Taylor Heineke starting ahead of Penix, and they're going to keep Heineke. He's going to be number 2. He believes Heineke's an elite backup, which I agree with, and he's putting Penix in position to play early. That's not what he wants to do. He doesn't want Penix to have to take the field this year. He wants Cousins to start, and you've got a guy in Taylor Heineke who has proven time and time again in his career, if you need him to step in for a few games and keep the team winning, he can do that. So if Cousins continues to kind of get dinged up, or if his Achilles runs behind and they need somebody who can kind of keep him at 2-2, 3-3 while Cousins gets back on schedule, Heineke's your guy for that. Now, if you want to make a deep playoff run and you want to win 10 games, Heineke's not your guy, but Cousins might be. So they've got Heineke there. They're going to let Penix develop slowly. I actually think this is the best way you can handle this absolute malpractice. That is, I feel bad for Penix here, personally.
I'm going to go on record as saying I do not think Taylor Heineke is an elite backup.
Boo.
However, I think Sam Howell's an elite backup. However, Raheem Morris has gone on record as saying that he's concerned about Kirk's health, right? So, I mean, what makes that situation? Let's not get into that debate. Just let the quote stand. Just trying to get at you, but I do think the concern with Kirk Cousins is his health, and they paid him a ton of money. And I think the reason that he wants Heineke as the backup is he doesn't want a situation where he throws Penix out there in a panic because Kirk can't go.
Yeah,
I think it's interesting. You're right. The interesting part of the story with regards to the rookie is that you got a guy like Michael Penix Jr. that might start out as third string. But then again, this is why training camp's interesting. If he balls out, I could see a scenario where he starts putting pressure on Kirk. You would expect Kirk is Kirk, right? He's thrived in pretty much every situation he's been in, and I would expect him to use this Michael Penix Jr. situation as something that gives him a spark. I'm sure he'll ball out. That's a talented roster in many ways. It's a very talented roster in many ways, and Raheem's a great coach.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, we saw this almost exact same scenario unfold in Dallas back with Romo and Prescott, right? Prescott was a later round guy, but Prescott balled out in the preseason. Romo struggled with some injuries. Prescott came in, took over, and then there was a whole, do we give it back to Romo? Do we let Dak stick with the team? Ultimately, Dak came out on top. So I think we could see the exact same situation unfold here if Penix shows enough in training camp and in the preseason to supplant Heineke at that number 2 spot. Or if Kirk is out for 6-7 games and Heineke struggles, maybe you see 3 games in, you go to Penix. Who knows?
I mean, they went to him as a starter last year, and it was not good.
No. He's not. This guy. He's not a win. Any guy who's below backup. Number 32 in the NFL is not an elite football player.
He's not an elite backup.
You're talking the best of the worst there, Pop, which I know is not always your favorite perspective to take, but neither is Sam Howell. Anyways, J.J. McCarthy, we'll let that quote sit too. J.J. McCarthy, number 10 overall pick for the Vikings via ESPN. Basically, the story here, very simple. They wanted to keep Cousins. Cousins just wanted too much money at this point in his career, coming off an Achilles. It wasn't what was best for the organization. They looked into a trade for Herbert. Obviously, that was never going to happen. So Darnold will be QB1 starting off, and he says, when the comfort level within our offense and his ability to translate it to adverse situations and difficult aspects of playing quarterback in the NFL are not magnified by inexperience, then McCarthy will be ready. Apparently, there's a very detailed plan over there. I trust Kevin O'Connell. I don't necessarily trust Sam Darnold. I think you might see a pretty lean year for the Vikings this year. I think you could see anywhere between like 6 to 9 wins, maybe, as they're in this transitional period. But I think my comp for McCarthy this season is Will Levis last season. I think we see a similar type of late in the year, he can come in and take over, show some promise, and then you expect a breakout in the following year.
Yeah, if you read there's a great article on ESPN about this situation in Minnesota. I would really encourage you to read it, especially if you're a Vikes fan. But Kevin O'Connell he wanted them to re-sign Cousins without a doubt. Decision was made that it was just way too pricey, and Kirk can say whatever he wants. He's obviously, been the smartest guy, maybe one of the smartest guys in the history in the NFL in terms of getting those contracts, and he went after the money. But then they tried to trade for Justin Herbert. Now, of course, not San Diego. The LA Chargers went, no, thank you. We're keeping Herbert. They're very high on him. So I don't think he wanted to be in the situation that he's in. I think it's a pretty telling quote that he doesn't think that J.J. McCarthy's ready right now.
Yeah.
Pretty clear. And, that's interesting because, going into the draft, he was touted as one of the most ready, NFL-ready guys. But, when you don't rely on a guy, when you're relying more on defense in your running game versus your quarterback, how do you know that he's that NFL ready? It's easier to look good if you've only got to do it 10 to 15 times a game because the rest of your team is so great. Right. And I think that's what we're seeing. Maybe he wasn't quite as ready to go. And this is really a 2-horse race in terms of, the best rookie quarterbacks, more so than what we thought it might have been, with the draft buzz.
Yeah. I mean, I think McCarthy landed in the best possible situation for him. And I think if he's going to be successful, it'll be there.
I don't know, though, because there's going to be pressure. That was a good Vikings team. And you let go of Cousins. And that fan base is passionate. It's one of the most passionate fan bases in the NFL. And if Darnold starts failing and McCarthy's not ready, that pressure is going to build in Minnesota.
Yeah.
So I don't know that that's a real easy situation for O'Connell or the quarterbacks. What you got to hope is that Sam Darnold could step up and really be a good bridge guy. And that is risky.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it'll work out. I like McCarthy. I like the tools he has available there. And I think in terms of like receivers, defense, offensive line, he's in great shape there.
I love you some KOC.
I'm a big Kevin O'Connell believer. Big Kevin O'Connell believer. I think O'Connell's probably a top 6, top 7 head coach in the NFL. I really like and offensive mind. Offensive mind. You say that, but
that's a big statement.
Name 7
it could
guys
be
you
true.
Like better than him.
It could
name
be true.
7 guys you like better than him. But I think as an offensive mind, he's got to be top 3 or 4. I'm a big O'Connell guy. I like O'Connell. But
good coach, good offensive coach, no doubt.
Really, really great football coach.
Great's too strong.
Let's talk. You're wrong, but let's talk Bo Nix, number 12 pick. Speaking of people being wrong, Sean Payton. Excuse me. I'm thinking about great offensive.
I just got to stop here for 1 second. Just quick. Kevin O'Connell's done enough so far. He could turn out to be a great coach. I'm not arguing that he's on that trajectory. But saying he's great right now is too strong. We've seen flashes of greatness. We haven't seen sustained greatness out of Kevin O'Connell.
I think it's too strong. I think what we've seen out of KOC is good enough to put him in. I'm not talking all-time great, but I'm talking great as well.
His greatness is going to be tested this year. If he passes this test, I'll give it to you.
I'm not sure.
This is a tough situation in Minnesota.
It is. It is a very tough
situation in Minnesota.
We'll see what he can do with it. Bo Nix, number 12 overall pick. Let's see. This is a scary situation over there. Jared Stidham, Zach Wilson are the other 2 guys. I think he's probably going to start. It seems like Sean Payton really has a twinkle in his eye for Bo Nix. Who knows how much is that just him gassing up his guy versus what Nix can do?
Is there any point to starting Jared Stidham or Zach Wilson?
No, and not on a team that's
it's about the situation, right?
Yeah.
There's just no point.
you can't expect Denver to win more than 4 games next year, 5 games. So why not just throw Nix out there and see what he can do? This is a guy you're married to for at least the next 2 or 3 years. He's your first overall pick, right? You might as well just get him some reps. This is
Sean Payton's confident.
Every game is the preseason out in Denver. They effed up. They traded for Wilson. That bombed. They're in cap hell. They lost a bunch of picks. That roster is in rough shape. You got to just see if you can get a miracle. Bo Nix is almost getting Sam Howell right now. You got to just see if you can get a miracle.
I don't know. Sean Payton, too, it's like, what has he really done to develop a quarterback? Has he proven he could develop a quarterback? He got a ready-made guy in New Orleans, a great
one player. Of the best ever.
A great player that was great before he came to New Orleans.
One of the best ever,
by the way, right? Help me with the name.
Drew Brees.
Jeez.
That was my goal.
I am fatigued. I'm fatigued. I'm not. My recall is like 0. It's usually like a 5 out of 10. Today it's like a 2 out of 10.
Recall.
What's your name? Shape. Dominic?
Yeah.
But now, I mean, I don't. We'll see. I don't know what to think about the situation with Bo Nix. Sean Payton seemed to think he's the only one that seems to think he was the best quarterback out there. He's very high on them. Maybe he's right. It would be a great story if he was.
Yeah.
But Denver's starting to turn into that revolving door, which we know too well, of quarterbacks just getting churned in and out of there. And hopefully for Bo Nix's sake, that's not the case. But, he wasn't the 5th guy off this board for no reason.
Yeah. Slim situation out there in Denver. It's rough. It's rough. We'll see. I mean, we had an unprecedented run on quarterbacks in the draft this year like we've never seen before. So that's what unprecedented means. So I'm glad I repeated that. But we had an unprecedented run there, and we're going to have unprecedented outcomes. That's what happens when you have unprecedented runs. So I'm very interested to see where this goes. And if you think
about it this way, right? You talked about some of the coaching that comes before this with KOC and others. You got Drake May, Michael Penix Jr., and J.J. McCarthy, who are all going to start the season as backups. Yeah. Bo Nix was picked after them. Yep. And he's going to be leaned on to potentially be the guy in Denver. You never know. There have been stranger things have happened. Low-round guys have turned out to be great players. Seems risky to me.
Yeah, me too. Let's wrap this thing up, Pop. What do you say?
I say we should.
Without further ado, I've been Dom.
This is Pop. Man, that was abrupt.
Another great week, everybody. Yeah, well, I'm ready to wrap it up, man. You say you want to wrap up, but you want to keep going. Keep it going, man.
No, I mean, Pop's we're wrapping up. That's it. We're done. We're done. I think you got to close it again, but it was a fun episode, was it not?
It was a fun episode. Let's wrap this thing up.
Subscribe, like, everything.
There you go.
Close it right.
Without further ado, I've been Dom.
This is Pop.
Thank you, guys.